day.
We do have a few questions, and the first one comes from Carl Malone. And he asks, what do you think of Konstantin Kisin's response by declaring Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and maybe Dave Smith as the woke right?
I'm so happy to have this question. Honestly, I was thinking about doing a show on this. I just don't like doing segments about people who I don't think deserve full segments. It's a good way to get attention into like that kind of conflict and controversy sells, but I just don't regard Konstantin Kisin as sufficiently noteworthy to do like a waste of segment on him. But since you asked, I'm so happy about it. It's the most amazing thing, this idea of woke right that they're using. Now, what's going on here is very obvious, extremely obvious, which is Konstantin Kisin loves Israel. He's been a Zionist since his youth, been taught to love Israel, loves Israel. And the people whom he's been targeting, particularly Tucker Carlson, but also Candace Owens, have become targets of people on the right for the first time. Like a year and a half ago, Konstantin Kisin wouldn't dare utter a criticism of Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens. What has happened, obviously, that has changed that is that Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and Dave Smith have become critics of Israel, which is the gravest crime. Like whoever becomes a critic of Israel with any kind of meaningful influence has to be destroyed. Just like you saw with Ta-Nehisi Coates, who, by the way, was given his first platform and hired by The Atlantic by Jeffrey Goldberg. And at the time, Ta-Nehisi Coates was pro-Israel. He was pro-Zionist. And he actually wrote an article comparing the Zionist trajectory to the attempt by Black Americans to find their own independence. So that's the reason he was welcomed at The Atlantic. I'm not saying the only reason, but it was obviously a prerequisite. So I imagine how Jeffrey Goldberg must feel. But anyway, Konstantin Kisin hates Tucker Carlson now and does a lot of videos about why he's so evil. And even though it's under the pretense of all this other stuff, the obvious motivating factor is Tucker Carlson's questioning of Israel, but more so like the U.S. support for Israel. And this is what amazes me so much, is that the insult phrase that they have come up with to talk about Tucker and Candace is the woke right. And this is why it's so hilarious and such projection and so ironic, because for years, people like Konstantin Kisin, the only reason we know his name is he was part of that like anti-woke faction that arose after Me Too, but especially the Black Lives Matter protests, like Barry Weiss. You know, they all branded on like, oh, we're such heterodox thinkers. We reject the woke ideology of the left. And the thing they hated most about the woke ideology of the left, according to them, was that it was all based on victimhood. It was all based on group identity. It was all based on this claim that the United States and the world is filled with all kinds of bigotry and all kinds of discrimination that is directed at Black people or Muslims or women or trans people or whoever. And this was all crybaby behavior, according to this anti-woke faction that emerged. This is just a left-wing attempt to turn themselves into victims, to whine constantly, to claim that they were the victims of systemic discrimination. That was what mostly the critique of the woke left was that it was like identity-based victimhood narratives, and at the same time that they were demanding to be shielded from ideas that they disliked based on the grounds that it made them unsafe, and that was mocked as being childlike. Okay. Now, over the last year, we have heard nothing. Like the primary narrative has been from the pro-Israel right, of which Konstantin Kisin is a part, exactly all the things that they have claimed define the sinister parts of the woke left. Oh, I'm the group of which I'm a member, Jews, are now the unique target of violent bigotry. We're the ones that are the victims. We are unsafe. We need protections. We're not even safe to walk on the streets in Europe anymore because people hate us so much. We can't even go on campus because we hear these genocidal chants that need to be stopped and the people on them need to be punished. That's the woke right. The woke right are the people who believe that who identify themselves as part of their demographic group, in this case Jews, and who have created this narrative that comes exactly from the woke left that they've spent the last however many years mocking, that their group is the true victim group, that their group is confronting this dangerous form of hatred and prejudice and discrimination and bigotry, that there's all these things going around them that make them unsafe, feeling unsafe on campuses. They need more protection from administrators. Administrators should be fired for not acting to protect them enough. To call critics of Israel the woke right is 180 degrees the opposite of the reality. And the people that are the ones that are constantly engaging in group-based self-discrimination and victimhood narratives, namely since October 7th, pro-Israel Jews and their supporters are the ones that have been peddling what had been defined as the woke left, the core ideas and tactics of the woke left forever. The woke right are the Konstantin Kisins of the world who believe that, oh, it just so happens that the group into which I was born, with which I most identify, we're the real victim
All
group.
of these other guys, when they do it, it's just
whiny, petulant.
But this time is actually
this
true.
is the real bigotry against me and my group. And that's the bigotry that the government and administrators need to act to protect.
Which is also kind of what they're using even to talk about Ta-Nehisi Coates as well. So like, oh, his criticism of Israel now is because he's woke, because he's always been woke, whatever, Ta-Nehisi Coates. And now it's also what they're using to criticize him, because I think it also, like, once you pitch yourself as the anti-woke movement, the only criticism that you can have to use against other people is woke, right? So,
well, right, and just two things about that is, one is it's not just that they've been whining about their own victimhood. There have been a huge number of censorship acts imposed in the name of protecting this group that they claim is uniquely victimized, which just so happens to be their own.
All this stuff, the deplatforming,
getting people fired en masse for criticizing Israel, enacting laws in the United States like the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act that radically expands the definition of anti-Semitism to include all sorts of very classically protected political ideas that are designed to put off limits. Criticism of Israel, Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott issuing executive orders to ban anti-Semitism or to shut down pro-Palestinian groups all throughout campus, having the police in multiple countries criminalize pro-Palestinian marches, all the things that they claim they believe that they are so opposed to and offended by because it violates the right of free expression and free speech. They use now the exact mentality of the woke left that they've been mocking forever, which is, no, these aren't just words. This is violence. These words are violent. From the river to the sea makes us unsafe. It's an attack on us. Globalize the intifada. This phrase is not allowed. This is a phrase of violence. Words are violence. And to hear Konstantin Kisin and people like him who have all the defining features of wokeism, it's just that they mock it when it comes from every other group that they don't care about, and believe it's, concocted and trivial and whiny and petulant. But their group is the real victimized, marginalized, endangered group, even though they occupy so many positions of power, which is why there's so much censorship on their behalf. It's just, that has been one of the biggest ironies, just to watch them call the others who are critical of Israel the woke right, when in fact, these are the people who use the defining elements of wokeism to define their entire worldview and to constantly turn themselves into victims.
And it's also kind of remarkable how so much of that anti-woke movement that emerged post-2020 has embraced the pro-Israel as almost exclusively.
Almost all of them.
Except Tucker and Candace, and these people need to be singled out and excluded, which is why
they're not being called the woke right, to discredit them. And this is the reality too, is that the reason this anti-woke movement became so powerful and such an obsession, like, why are you so concerned with like ideas on college campus? If you go back and look at Sheldon Adelson and Miri Middleton and who they were funding, and what the Israeli government and the groups that it funds or that act on its behalf have been warning about way before October 7th, like going back into the 2010s, they understood that one of the biggest threats to Israel was that there was too much anti-Israel and pro-Palestinian sentiment emerging on college campuses, and they were petrified by it because
Barry Weiss has been carrying that banner for a long time.
ever since she was in college. And she tried to get professors fired who she thought was too critical of Israel. And so what this anti-woke movement really was, it was masquerading as some sort of principled defense of free speech, when in reality what it was it was in large part, not entirely, but in large part driven by this contempt for the dominant ideology in American campuses, because that dominant ideology included so much anti-Israel criticism and so much pro-Palestinian movement. And even the thing they feared most was the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, which was modeled on the college movement that helped bring down the South African apartheid regime. And the Israeli government and its servants and loyalists in the United States understood that colleges and the ideology and free speech and organizing on colleges was one of the main threats to Israeli interest. And they needed a way. Obviously, they couldn't come out and admit that that was what they really cared most about. So they created this kind of anti-woke movement to attack this left-wing ideology on campus, in large part because they perceived it as a threat to Israel, which is why, as you say, all these people, not all, but most, who built their careers and who only became even known by purporting to oppose woke ideology and raising the banner of free speech, have turned on a dime since October 7th. But the reason they were so focused on college campuses in the first place was because the Israeli government and Israeli billionaires and activists understood that what was happening on colleges was one of the main threats to the Zionist interests. And you can just go find mainstream articles where, Sheldon Adelson and people like that talk openly about that.
Yeah. I think that was a very good answer, Glenn.
Thank you. You too, Victor. The clip you just watched is from the live after show we do on Locals, exclusively for our local subscribers. The live after show airs every Tuesday and Thursday nights immediately following our live system update show on Rumble, which is freely available to everyone. To join our Locals community, simply click the join button under each video on our Rumble page or at the link below. That not only entitles you to exclusive access to our after show, where we take your questions, respond to your critiques and feedback, and hear suggestions for issues we should cover and people we should interview, but also to the transcripts for each show that we produce, as well as the exclusive written content we publish there. Enjoy.